Right, we are on step 7. Adjust the volume of the IVT reaction to 200 microliters with nuclease-free water. This is a little bit of a tricky step. So what I typically do for this step is I get new RNase-free tubes to serve as a temporary tube, because we're going to have to add water, then add binding buffer, and then add ethanol to them. All the reactions are in 20 microliters of volume. Therefore, I need to add 180 microliters of water. So I'll be putting 180 microliters of water into every tube using 200 microliter filtered RNase-free tips. I'm going to put that aside to indicate I'm done with it. Next, we will be adding, next on my list of reagents, is 100 microliters of a binding buffer along with the sample. So first I will add the sample, and second, in rapid succession, I will add the binding buffer. I suspect the RNA is not particularly stable during this step, which is why I do the rapid 1-2 punch, if you will, so they can get in that sweet, sweet binding buffer. And I have my tubes I'm just throwing away tubes as I go to help myself keep organized. That is step 7. Now we're proceeding with step 8, which says, or that's 7 and 8. Now we're proceeding with step 9, which says add 300 microliters of ethanol. And then transfer to a flow-through tube. So using a RNase-free filter tip, the filter of which just went flying across my bench, I am transferring the contents into, by adding the 300, pipetting up briefly, and transferring into the new tube. I'm done with my ethanol, so I can put that away. I have a total of 5 tubes, so I need a balance, which I have from an old reaction. So I'm going to add 600 microliters of water to that. Balance. So we have completed step 6, 7, 8, and 9. Moving on to step 10, transfer the mixture to a column and spin for 30 to 60 seconds at maximum speed, equivalent to 14,000 Gs. For 30 seconds. While that is spinning, I am going to be labeling tubes. Labeling 5 tubes for each. I'm going to discard the flow through into a small 100 ml beaker. Being waste, I do not necessarily need to be careful about reusing tips, at least I think so. I'm not sure about anything, including this. So using a fresh RNase-free filter tip, we proceed to step 11. Let's cross out my protocol. Step 11, add 700 microliters of wash buffer 1. And you can see I had all the buffers arranged in order so I wouldn't get confused. To each tube, and again centrifuge. It has a little bit left. I'm going to spin them for another moment because they had a little bit of liquid left in the top, and it isn't, which happens with these RNA tubes. Is that better? That's better. Okay. Coming back again. I don't necessarily have to get all the rest of the waste, but of course I'm going to. Yeah, so a bit was left in these tubes. So perhaps I could have done the initial spin for longer. And then these look fine if I recall. Yep, okay. So, adding 700 microliters of wash buffer 1 for each tube. If I recall correctly, wash buffer 1 is toxic. So you do not want to be using wash buffer 1 without adequate safety precautions. Or wash buffer 2. I think they're both toxic. I'm not sure which one is the more toxic of the two. And then for the balance, I do not need wash buffer. I can use just water for the balance, of course. And I do not need RNA-free water. I can just use regular water. While this is spinning, I will of course exchange tips. My tip box is empty. We will discard the flow through to finish step 11. Some splatter here. So step 12 says add 700 microliters of wash buffer 2. And then centrifuge, as before. Perhaps I should have used the new tip every time. And balance. Again, while that centrifuges, I am labeling tubes. Here is a tricky part in the protocol. It says, as a side note of step 12, which really should be its own step, it says, discard the flow through and repeat. It is very, 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 very easy, considering the length of this protocol, to accidentally not repeat or forget if you repeated. Especially if you're me and have the memory of a goldfish. The best way to get around this is to meticulously annotate your notes as to if you've done the repeat or not. And then I made myself a dummy tube here that says repeat from an old kit to remind myself that I need to do the repeat. All right, so step 12B is add 700 more microliters of wash buffer 2. I'm done with that. And then I can now proceed to centrifuge again for the final step on 12. Final part of 12, I should say. Again, while that is going on, I will be labeling tubes. I just hit the camera. Now I have to re-RNase my hands and get new gloves because I hit the camera. All right, 1 second. Of course, these gloves are RNase free if in the packaging. But you always worry whenever you touch anything that you haven't RNase wiped. Like when you're touching the glove to put it on. So I typically just RNase my hands. So we've finished with step 12. We're moving on to step 13, which is a fairly simple step. It reads, centrifuge the empty purification columns for an additional 60 seconds at 14,000 Gs to remove any residual wash buffers. So I'm going to first remove the flow through, and then we will centrifuge. I will centrifuge this for a full 60 seconds. And like usual, while that's going on, I'm going to be labeling tubes. One last tube. And if you have done this correctly, as that final spin ends, you should have labeled your very last tube. So I labeled 5 tubes for each, in the hopes that I would have enough gRNA to fill all of the tubes. And I need one empty. All right, I can move the lids into, just do a quick visual inspection to make sure there's no liquid left in them. And I can move them all into their respective tubes. And then for all with the balance, I can now throw away my empty containers. The protocol says add 10 microliters of nuclease-free water to the center of each column. I'm going to add more. I'm going to add a full 25 microliters. Again, in the hopes that I have enough to distribute between 5 tubes. So I'll have to find a 200 microliter RNA-free filter tip for this. It is important to make sure the tubes and caps are closed on tightly, especially the RNA-free water, which will exchange carbon dioxide in the atmosphere for carbonic acid, lowering the pH. At least I think that's how it works. So when I am done, I'm going to give this a tighten, as well as all of the other tubes. Okay, and then centrifuging. In this centrifuge step, it is, the important thing to note is there is an arrow there, and you can imagine these tubes as Superman. Superman's cape flies behind him. So the way to not have the tubes break off is to have all of the little super microfuge capes flying behind them as it spins. Otherwise it will snap and